Toxic masculinity is a term we hear a lot. But what does it actually look like? If you want a case study, look no further than Nate Jacobs. He is the terrifying end result of generations of broken men teaching their sons that the only way to be a man is to be hard, to be dominant, and to crush every feeling that doesn't look like anger. Euphoria puts this archetype under a microscope. Nate isn't just a bully. He's a walking pressure cooker of societal expectations. He's trapped by his father's hypocrisy, terrified of his own sexuality, and utterly incapable of forming a real human connection. He doesn't know how to love, only how to possess. And on that note, I want to say a huge thank you for the incredible response to my video on Maddy. The comments and discussions were amazing, and so many of you pointed out that to truly understand Maddy's story, you have to understand the man who caused so much of her pain. You asked for a deep dive on Nate, so here we are. But let's be clear, this video isn't about excusing Nate's behavior. It's about dissecting it. We're going to examine how his entire identity is a violent performance, one that costs him and everyone around him dearly. Nate Jacobs is what happens when the all-American dream is built on a foundation of rage and repression, and the whole structure is about to come crashing down. Chapter 1. Forged in Fire. The Sins of the Father. Nate Jacobs didn't just appear out of nowhere. He was built, forged. And to understand the monster, we have to go back to its creator, his father, Cal. From the moment Nate could walk, Cal began molding him into an idea. Not a person, but an idea of what a man should be. Strength was the only acceptable virtue. Emotion was a fatal flaw. But Cal's lessons weren't about building character. They were about building a cage. Cal himself was living a double life, suffocated by his own repressed sexuality. So, he projected that self-hatred onto his sons, creating a rigid, homophobic rulebook for masculinity. Nate was just the son who learned the rules best. And then there's the box. The home movies that weren't home movies at all. At just 11 years old, Nate discovers his father's secret life. And in that moment, two catastrophic things happen. First, he learns that the man who preaches control and strength is a hypocrite and a liar, shattering his entire foundation of trust. And second, in the most formative years of his life, his understanding of sex and intimacy becomes tangled with shame, secrecy, and power. It's not a source of connection, it's a weapon. Something you hide, something you use against others, something that can destroy you. This is the foundation of Nate Jacobs, a boy taught that love is conditional, masculinity is a rigid performance, and the darkest secrets are the ones you use to control others, starting with yourself. Chapter 2. Love as a Battlefield. The War with Maddy. So, armed with this twisted education from his father, what does Nate's version of love look like? It looks like a battlefield, and his first war is with Maddy. Their relationship is almost never about romance. It's a relentless, exhausting struggle for dominance. Maddy is a unique challenge for Nate. On one hand, she's the perfect trophy, beautiful, confident, and feared. Possessing her reinforces his status. But on the other hand, she has a will of her own. She sees the cracks in his performance. She isn't afraid of him, and she fights back. That drives him absolutely insane because if he can't fully control her, his entire worldview crumbles. His abuse isn't just physical. It's a calculated campaign of psychological warfare. He isolates her, gaslights her, and makes her feel like her reactions are the problem, not his actions. This creates their signature toxic cycle, a period of love bombing and idealization, followed by a challenge to his authority, leading to explosive violence, and then a tearful, manipulative reconciliation where he convinces her, and himself, that his rage is just a symptom of his overwhelming love. Take their fight at the carnival. It starts over something trivial, but Maddy's public defiance is a direct threat to Nate, and he only knows one way to respond, with overwhelming force. What the show frames as a moment of disturbing passion is nothing more than a raw assertion of physical power. He's not loving her, he's conquering her. He is reestablishing the order he believes should exist. And the most twisted part is Maddy understands this dynamic. She is a participant, not just a victim. She is drawn to the power and intensity of their connection, even when it's destructive. She knows Nate's violence is a tool, and at times, she is willing to endure it to maintain her position. It's a mutually understood, though profoundly unhealthy contract. For Nate, this relationship cements his template for intimacy. Love isn't about partnership, it's about possession. And any threat to that possession must be met with absolute brutality. Chapter 4. The Fantasy of Submission, the Conquest of Cassie. If Nate's relationship with Maddy was a war against an equal, his relationship with Cassie is an occupation of a willing territory. After the chaos with Maddy, Nate seeks out her polar opposite. He finds Cassie Howard, a girl so desperate for validation that she is willing to completely erase herself to become whatever a man wants her to be. Nate sees this vulnerability immediately. He doesn't fall in love with Cassie. He recognizes an opportunity. His pursuit of her isn't about passion. It's about a project. He can finally build the perfect girlfriend from the ground up, one who won't talk back, won't challenge him, and will worship him as the center of her universe. This is the ultimate form of control for him, a power so absolute it becomes passive. He doesn't love her. He loves the reflection of his own power that he sees in her devotion. With Cassie, Nate achieves his perfect fantasy, a relationship with no resistance, only submission. He gets to play the role of the loving, protective boyfriend. But it's a hollow performance. He's not protecting a person, he's guarding a possession. And in doing so, he proves that for him, love is just another word for total control. Chapter 4. Anonymity and Anguish, the Paradox of Jules. But what happens when Nate's desire isn't a power play? What happens when it's genuine? That's where Jules comes in and where we see the most profound paradox of Nate's character. Online, hidden behind the anonymous username ShyGuy118, Nate is finally free from the prison of being Nate JACOBS. In this digital space, he can shed the hyper-masculine armor his father forced upon him. He's allowed to be vulnerable, tender, and emotionally open in a way he never could be in real life. The connection he forms with Jules is arguably the only authentic one he's ever had. And that's precisely why he has to destroy it. The object of his genuine affection, Jules, is a trans girl. In his rigid homophobic worldview, she represents everything he's been conditioned to hate and fear within himself. His desire for her is a catastrophic threat to the entire identity he's been forced to construct. So he does the most vicious thing imaginable. When his two worlds collide, he chooses the facade. To protect Nate JACOBS, he must annihilate the part of himself that connected with Jules. His blackmail isn't just an attack on her, it's an act of violent self-preservation. He terrorizes her for being the one person who saw the real him, and in doing so, he terrorizes his own true self back into its cage. He weaponizes his only moment of genuine intimacy, turning his deepest vulnerability into his cruelest tool of control. It's a tragic, horrifying act that proves Nate is more afraid of himself than anyone else. Chapter 6. The Cost of Control, a Prison of One. So, what is the ultimate price of maintaining this perfect, brutal facade? We see it in the moments when the mask finally, violently cracks. Nate's rage isn't just a tool he uses on others. It's a symptom of a brutal internal war, and in that war, he is his own greatest victim. The most shocking example of this is when he smashes his own head against the floor. After Maddy discovers the disc of his father's tapes, Nate experiences a total loss of control. The secrets that form the foundation of his power are exposed, and his rage has nowhere to go but inward.
He physically punishes his own body for his perceived failures, trying to beat the vulnerability out of himself. It's a horrifying display that reveals a deep, consuming self-hatred. This is the source of his profound isolation, even when he's the center of attention, on the football field, at a party, with a girl in his arms. He is utterly alone. No one knows the real him, partly because he won't let them, but also because the real him is a tangled mess of contradictions that he can't even face himself. This all comes to a head in his final confrontation with Cal. In a stunning reversal of power, Nate finally gets the upper hand on his creator. But look at how he does it. Not by being a better man, but by using the exact same tools of blackmail, fear, and psychological terror that Cal used on others. He holds a gun to his own head, not to end his life, but to break his father's spirit. In his moment of ultimate victory, Nate doesn't free himself from his father's shadow. He becomes it. He wins the power play, but in doing so, he fully inherits the JACOBS family curse. Nate's obsession with control makes genuine loyalty impossible. For him, loyalty is a one-way street that must always lead back to him. He doesn't have friends or allies. He has assets and pawns to be moved around a board that only he can see. Look at how he treats his own teammates. They aren't his brothers. They're just a backdrop for his glory. When his friend McKay is struggling, Nate doesn't offer support. He offers cruel, self-serving advice about Cassie, designed only to assert his own knowledge and dominance. McKay's feelings are irrelevant. This transactional view of people defines all of his relationships. His loyalty to Maddy or Cassie flips the instant one serves his needs better than the other. They aren't people to him, they are territories to be won, lost, and recaptured. But the ultimate proof of his disloyalty is what he does to Fez. Fez, in his own way, was trying to protect Nate and his family by intimidating him. Nate's response? He calls the police and has his home raided. There is no code, no honor. If you are an obstacle to Nate's control, you are disposable, period. This is the core of his tragedy. He surrounds himself with walls so high that no one can get in, and he betrays anyone who gets too close. He rules his kingdom completely alone.
Conclusion. When we piece it all together, Cal's toxic legacy, the wars with Maddy and Cassie, the paradox of Jules, and his own consuming self-hatred, a clearer picture of Nate JACOBS emerges. He is a young man suffocating under the weight of a masculinity he never chose, but is now forced to defend at all costs. Euphoria never asks us to forgive Nate. His actions are monstrous and inexcusable. But the show does something more challenging. It asks us to understand him. Understanding where the monster came from doesn't absolve it of its sins, but it makes for a far more compelling and terrifying cautionary tale. In his desperate, lifelong quest to build a fortress of perfect, unassailable masculinity, Nate JACOBS has only succeeded in building himself a prison. He is trapped inside the very performance he believes makes him strong. The rage, the violence, the manipulation, these are not signs of his power, but the frantic rattling of his own cage. The brutal cost of his power play isn't just the pain he inflicts on everyone he claims to love, but the complete annihilation of his own humanity. He is a king on a throne of ashes, ruling over a kingdom of one with no way out. In the end, Nate JACOBS is a ghost haunting his own life. He's a character built from the spare parts of his father's hypocrisy and a crippling fear of his own vulnerability. He sees love not as a partnership, but as a territory to be conquered. Maddy was a war, Cassie was a colonization, and Jules was a self-destructive impulse he had to crush before it could set him free. The true tragedy of Nate isn't just the pain he inflicts, but the profound emptiness he receives in return. He has spent his entire life building an impenetrable fortress of masculinity, only to find himself its sole prisoner. He has all the power in the world, but he is utterly alone, incapable of giving or receiving genuine love.
That is the brutal cost of his performance. But what do you think? Is there any path to redemption for a character like Nate? Or is he doomed to repeat the cycle of violence he inherited? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't seen my analysis of Maddy Perez, you can check that out right here. And as always, if you enjoyed this breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives. Thanks for watching.